What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is Escape the 4Z, and we are back with the Kings of Sinks. Round 2 results. We are getting close to the end game. We are in the mid game. We're going to find out who's going to make it to the end game and make it to the grand finale. Out of the 25 sinkers that have made it, only 10 will survive. But before we go over that, I am joined here with my fair and wonderful judges. PGS, say hello.
Hello everybody. It's been a while.
And we have Stealth.
What's going on, guys? It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here.
And we have our judges from the last time. However, most of them could not make it to this recording since most of us live in a bunch of different time zones. But in spirit, we do have Toverniak somewhere in spirit. We got some results to get into, folks, and we're going to get right to it. But before we do, we must go over our DNFs. The players that did not submit anything for this particular round, and I come with a heavy heart, and it's very disappointing, but you see the names on screen. Iris E from Vietnam, Nekarino Chami, aka CMK Hodor. I will admit that's a pretty disappointing one. He was a top 3 competitor and could have definitely won this thing if he submitted something really good. Venus has not submitted, but that was to be expected. Same would Make It Rain. And then Lizzie from China, Haruka Chan, aka Purple, who made it into the finals previously in a big surprise run. Purple's run ends here with the DNF. And last but not least, Jabber Turtle with a DNF. Very unfortunate circumstance, but we understand, everybody's got life, everybody's got things going on. So lesson learned, folks. If you have life commitments, focus on that and not gun sinking. That is fine by me. But rest in peace to everyone that has not made it through the DNFs, and press F in the chats for all those that DNF'd. And with that, we can officially move on to the results. So 18 sinkers remain and only 10 shall make it. So 8 will be eliminated after this round that have submitted. So finishing in 18th place with a grand total of 35.16 points, we have Zippy Cream, who decided to go back to doing Cyberpunk, and only Cyberpunk this time, instead of having 2 games in the mix, as Zippy decided to focus on Cyberpunk, which I think, in my opinion, does impact the variety score with this particular sync, and it kind of gives it a bit of a downgrade in that regard. I think that one of the biggest issues with this particular sync is, with this particular song, Cyberpunk didn't really fit with this particular entry, I think, in my personal opinion, and the audio balancing, I think, could use some work. What do you guys think?
Alright, so for me, the sync itself was done quite well. The start was a good build-up. The sprays as well were really good in the terms of audio mixing. The only thing about that I could give quite a couple of comments is the fists, for me, were that distinguishable from the song itself. But the most glaring issue throughout is the lack of any beats after the first drop. Like, the whole chorus itself, which is supposed to be the heaviest part of the song, was lacking that extra oomph that could have at least elevated a lot, because the lack of beats throughout the most important part of the sync took a lot of points out of the accuracy department.
I felt a little similarly. I contrast that a little bit. So it felt like, and this stems from the game that you chose, I felt like a lot of the guns were randomly selected, or at least they didn't coincide very well with the beats in areas, and I think that was a very limiting factor. And I have nothing against Cyberpunk or using, these differentiated, these kind of oddball games for syncing, but it just doesn't feel like it was very well suited for the song chosen. I've synced this song before too, so I understand how difficult it is to kind of find the right game and the right gunshots and sounds to use for different beats. But especially in terms of like sprays and stuff, I have written in my notes at 127, it just didn't really sound very good. It didn't really match the music very well. And again, that reverts back to what I said a moment ago. Most of the gunshots, they just didn't sound well behind the music and sounded out of place. And I think that directly stems from, I repeat myself, the game choice. But I would aim into adding a bit more variety your syncs as you go forward, a little bit different game choice maybe. But I did like the effects. They were very simplistic. A lot of them were kind of linear, so they kind of lacked character a little bit, but they were very innovative. They matched the sync. They were relatively well executed, but again, and you'll see this a lot going forward with a lot of these missions, is audio was definitely an issue. Whether that's the choice of gun that you use for the for particular beats, or whether it's on the low end or high end, that's definitely a lingering problem with a lot of these submissions, and I think that did do a lot of damage to your sync.
So to put this in perspective, 20%, 22% to be exact, of the scoring is in note accuracy and gun choice. And if we break down the scoring for each of the sinkers, and in particular the 5 different categories that were categorized on, where last round all of the scoring was put into one central scoring. This time the scoring is a lot more broken down this round. So the difference between this round and last round is a lot of the scoring is going to hit you more for the little things that a certain sync might lack, which that's how the competition is exactly designed here. But a lot of the lower scoring for this particular sync for Zippy Cream was on note accuracy and gun choice. And there were a couple of scores there that were 6s or belows. So if you get 2 or 3 judges that are going to give you those really low scores like that for note accuracy and gun choice, it's definitely going to kill your score. And I think that in particular, it's a pretty clear sign that Cyberpunk didn't really match this particular game, which I think was the biggest glaring issue, as we've discussed before. And the note accuracy is really what brought the scores down as low as it did, in my personal opinion. And then the second lowest on the scoring pylon was audio mastering and audio mixing. So going into your next venture, or or even KOS 8, I'd say I would hope to see you in KOS 8 again, Zippy. I would focus on honing in on note accuracy, and mixing and mastering would be the 2 big things that I would mention. So finishing in 17th place with a grand total of 46.88, we have Mr. Ragdizzle. The Cinderella run for Mr. Ragdizzle does end here, but a bright future indeed for Mr. Ragdizzle he has made it into the second round finally and got to compete with the big boys, and it's a pretty big accomplishment. However, we could see the round 2 jitters in this particular entry because, I'll be honest with you, just feels like it was rushed. And he was one of the last people to submit this round, and you can kind of tell with how this sync was created. Feels like there a little bit of missed potential, could have been more that could have been added into play. And I'd say again that audio mastering is definitely one of the biggest things, one of the biggest themes just throughout this competition, as old as time itself. Audio mastering. And Ragdizzle's lower scores did come in through audio mastering. However, I would also go ahead and say, from a technical complexity standpoint, doesn't really seem that complex, the sync that he made. You know, I would have thought that compared to his first round sync, he would have stepped up the complexity a little bit this round, but I think he missed the mark on that as well. PGS, what do you guys say?
Oh, in my opinion, to be honest, the sync itself was solid. There were 2 glaring issues that brought this corner down with me. One, the tale as old as time itself, audio mastering. Especially that KSG jump scare that I got in the build-up. And the other part was, and the most glaring one, to be honest, which I could get it that it was a choice to make the scene pop out a bit more, was the choice of the revolvers and the deagle to be used as the beat itself. Like, the kick should have been the deagle, and the snare should have been the 44. If you wanted to use those guns as the beat themselves, because I don't know, it sounds weird. It doesn't have the 44s don't have the punch that the kick has, and the deagle itself it's too of a grave like sound for it to be used as a snare. And I think that was the thing that threw me off a bit of the chorus itself. It's like, why is the deagle, why is the magnum sounding like that? And I think that was the most glaring thing, to be honest.
Biggest peeve here was audio, because before I say anything, the pack that you're using, I know that pack, it's almost entirely high-end audio. No bass whatsoever. I know because I have, and although it's great for sprays and really nice Foley tracks, that high-end audio, that high messing with the equalization on this pack really sounds good for stuff like that. And snares. It's tough to implement well with most music when exclusively used like you did in this pack, but it's still a good basic sync, nothing too flashy or wild, very low key. From what I understand, this was made in 2 days, and from what I gather in this description, and if that's true, that's pretty impressive. But I think it needed some more time put into it in order to be great, in order for it to be a KOS submission or propel you into the next round. There's small things here and there that went unturned that distract from the actual sync, like the KSG's, PGS mentioned, the KSG's loudness on the drop was basically a jump scare. And how quiet the PKP sprays were immediately after. A few different choices in guns for the beats would have made all the difference. And again, another thing the PGS said, the 44, completely out of place for a kick. It just really doesn't have the right tone for something like that. And I think Escape mentioned earlier, all these tiny nitpicky things that seem like they're small, they're going to take away a lot of value from your sync because of how distracting they are from the actual sync itself. But it had a few good choices in the guns, but again, the small I don't know what you'd say, discrepancies, they make all the difference. There was some good examples of, legitimately well synced parts, like the part with the silent snipers, which in my opinion are some of the best and most useful sounds from Modern Warfare 3. And I would say in the future, outside of the competition, if you can get away with more individual single shots instead of sprays, go for it, because that's where you can capitalize on that variety I was talking about I will talk about in a couple of the other syncs, like I think of Light Sound Studio, the amount of variety that you can achieve, even from a game that's not really common to sync. Variety. That's what gives your sync the most value. That's what keeps somebody entertained. Really adds a lot of value to it. But it's still a good submission. And keep representing the US of A. I have to say that as an American myself. But anyway, go ahead, Escape.
Amen there, brother. The American patriotism does flow within this VC, with the 2 out of the 3 of us being from
yes,
America. Indeed. But I will say that this is a great experience for Ragdizzle. I think being in the second round, and I hope to see Ragdizzle in KOS 8, and to see him build upon this, and to maybe take that next step, get into the finale next time. And this is still a good result for Ragdizzle, all things considered, in terms of the getting into the second round in the first place. Ain't no small feat. It takes quite a big leap, and an even bigger leap to compete with the people that are left in this competition. So with that, we now move on to 16th place. And speaking of the big boys, finishing in 16th place with a grand total of 47.77, the ancient god of gun sinks falls here, Tobzy. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not really going to lie. I'm going to be brutal when I say this, right? And it's because we hold Tobzy to such a high standard, because he's a champion. He is a champion of Kings of Sinks all the way back in Season 2. He was... Himself and Jayton are, in this particular round, the only previous Kings of Sinks winners, and we hold them to a pretty high standard because they've won this competition before. They've taken those leaps and bounds before, but I think it was one of those situations where he threw out the old tricks card, and it's very cool visually, and obviously in Season 2, this is that kind of sync that did win him Season 2, but it's just the standards have risen so much to the point where an entry like this is just, unfortunately, too simple. The really big, hard-hitting scoring that really hurt Tobzy this round was technical complexity. We've seen one of the judges gave him a 2. We've seen another judge give him a 6, but otherwise, 8s and 10s all around with the other scoring. But another person gave him a 4. So the biggest thing with this entry was just the technical complexity is severely lacking in this particular entry. And that also comes down to lack of variety as well. We don't see a lot of variety in this sync in terms of the weapons that are chosen. You get maybe a couple of guns and the tank. It sounds good, the audio sounds fine, but just way too simple at this stage of the game.
Yeah, it was a really cool art style. The first thing I noticed was the Abrams scene firing reflected off of the scope. It's just cool little chroma keying stuff, and the emphasis on beauty in simplicity is definitely here, but there is, however, an absent variety that I look for most in these submissions. Not to say it's not very, very well synced, very low key and easy going with super creative vocal snippets that almost completely define its character. I thought that was super cool. I think that's Reinhardt in the background. That was definitely cool. Very cool. But this can't compete with something of mutual quality with 20 times variety. It's not to say it's not a great submission. Super satisfying effects. Super clean audio. Of course, this comes from Topsy, so it's going to have clean audio. But I want more. But still, it was great work regardless.
So for me, this sync in terms of art direction, really good, top tier, and what we expect from Topsy himself. But yeah, as Scape and Stealth have said, the weakest part is the complexity itself. For me, just the weakest part is the chorus, because it's just the SRAM, I think it's the Barrett and the tank itself on the scope, and that's it. And I think it could have used a little bit more. It could have used the audio that you use from the Q5, the attack jet, on top of it to at least add a little bit more flair. I know that for A motives, you could have the sync was that short. Well, no, it's 2 minutes 11 seconds, but it's just because of the repetition that you feel that it's really short. But credit what is due. The mix itself, the audio mix, the voice remix from Reinhardt itself as well. But yeah, it could have been a bit higher score if this was round 1. But at the stage of the competition we're at, it was just too simple compared to the rest of the syncs that we have here.
Yeah, and the technical complexity that, especially at this particular round, we look at the breakdown of some of the scoring. With the 5 categories, 15% of the scoring is personal subjective, 17.5% is effects and theme. But then one of the 3 big categories, note accuracy and gun choice, mixing and mastering, and technical complexity is all 22.5%. So when you're lacking in one of the 3 big categories there, it's going to hurt your scoring. So if you're hurting in technical complexity, it's really going to hurt your score. Like if you're hurting on the personal subjective front, that's not as bad as being, getting scores for technical complexity's sake that are low, So it's, if you're getting lower scores at this stage of the game, it's definitely going to cost you a finale spot, at least in my personal opinion, and I'm being brutal when I say this, but overall, the Ancient God still blesses us with a pretty cool sync, a big throwback to his round 2 entry when he won back in round 2, but just, unfortunately the standard has gotten so far up ever since then, and the Ancient God has still got it. He got to the second round yet again, so he's still producing some wonders. But with that, we move on to 15th place. And in 15th place, speaking of Ancient Gods of Gunsinkers here, Mr. Jarail Aimvis finishes in 15th place with a score of 56-31. So part of how this round 2 is designed, right, is to see if sinkers are going to take that step forward with much less limited time. And most of the time when sinkers do that, they're going to improve their score. And they're going to do very well. And I think, at least in my personal opinion, I think this is a step up from the first sync that he did in round number 1. And I think that the audio, as Jarrell is very good at in terms of his mixing and mastering, has scored pretty high. We got an 8.8 on 1. We got a 6.0 is a little bit on the lower end, but still pretty good. Most of the judges have given him pretty high audio scores. But the big focus, at least in terms of the scoring is suggesting that this particular sync was too simple, I think, from a technical complexity standpoint. Compared to what we've seen Aimvis do in the past, we've seen him do much more masterpiece syncs, and in terms of the scoring says that he could work on the technical complexity just a little bit more. I mean, it doesn't have to be like, crazy complex, but I think it just has to improve a tiny bit more. And considering that he added multiple games, I'm going to throw this out there. Maybe, I'd say a tad bit more variety couldn't hurt this sync. Maybe a little bit more. Like, in terms of, like, the amount of games is good. I like the amount of games that he used, and I like that he used a good amount of games in general for a multi-game sync, and we've seen a lot of multi-game syncs this particular round as well. But I think that using a little bit more variety in those set games could have maybe improved the score a little bit, maybe get a little bit more creative, That would just be my 2 cents that I would throw in. But also, the other thing that I'm going to throw in, just so nobody's discouraged, at this stage of the game, every little bit counts. And every little bit counts with what you do with your syncs. If you want to get, like, from getting to round 2 to the finale, it is very close. So this was still a very strong entry, and Jarrell still put out a very good entry. This is by no means a bad gun sync. It is a very strong gun sync. And it's a byproduct, again, of just this competition so fierce. And it's just the other entries just won up to this one, in my personal opinion, especially on the technical complexity front. When you compare that to the rest of the entries that are out there, this is a little too simple, at least if you're looking to get into the finale.
Yeah, for me, the biggest gripe that I had with Aimvis on round 1 was the use of only Battlefield 4, which is his strongest suit. Mm-hmm. He fixes this in this entry by using a lot of games, which honestly, and speaking of the audio mix in itself, is the best in the game. Like, this entire sync felt like he used a single game, because all of the audio, because each game has a different audio balancing, each one feels the same, and it's just a structure that actually keeps you inside the sync throughout the entire duration. But he still leaves the closing section of the song to Battlefield 4, which is his strongest suit. But the biggest improvement he made from the last game is also the biggest gripe in terms of the whole competition itself, because it mixes it up with a bit more variety, but it's just that effects are quite nice, but you expect them at this point in the competition, and compared to the other entries we have in this round, it's a little bit less than what they offered.
Yeah, very true, definitely. I thought that they were really well, particularly on the sprays, when I say this, very well synced. That could have been a little bit louder, only slightly, not to say that they were too quiet, but their pitch matched the music in most places extremely well. Battlefield 4 at the end was phenomenal, of course, because it's Jarrell. Mm-hmm. But I was hoping to see you venture out into trying some different visual effects, especially since the demeanor of the submission differs so much from your round 1 submission. Round 1 submissions in general from previous KOS seasons. Whereas definitely this one, admittedly, it's a lot harder hitting. You had a lot more opportunity with different effects. I think different transitions. Not to say that the ones that you did have weren't fitting. They absolutely were. And this was still very well done. I have very few critiques on audio other than saying if the music was turned down slightly, the sprays would have sounded much better, but they're still very effective. Like PGS said, we wanted to see a little bit more variety in game. I think you did very well. You executed that very well. And I already said this, but some more variety in visual effects. They go hand in hand. There's an equilibrium that needs to be there, especially in the second round. This is going to propel you to the finals. You need to take that extra leap as well, venture into that field as well. aside from just adding a couple games. But I'm just getting nitpicky at this point. It's still a very effective sync. It's still a great sync.
And Jerail, just like Tobzi, is ancient. They're ancient syncers, but they're both very effective at what they do, and they both have had experience. In particular, Jerail's had experience in the finals before, and I think him just taking that final leap to really get into that upper echelon, like the top 3, top 2. I think that's just been the one thing that Jerail has not quite done yet, where maybe Tobzi has done it, like try to experiment a little, like you've been talking about, you know. This particular round, it is difficult, yes, and you want to have a good, effective sync, but, you know, we're also going to see if people take that step forward, and I think at the very least, Jerail did take that step forward compared to round 1. So great entry all around from Jerail. We now move on to 14th place with a grand total of 57-30. And unfortunately, another American sinker falls, and another Cinderella run ends as well. We have Xbox Syncs getting eliminated in this round, but honestly, you know, hats off to Xbox. He's had a fantastic journey, even just to get into the second round, and this second round entry is very strong. I would say that compared to his first song, I like the song choice a little better in the second round than the first, personal opinion wise. However, I think that this particular entry, I think, takes a slight downgrade from an audio mastering standpoint, where there are certain differentiated sprays that sound a little bit unbalanced compared to the rest of it. And, or at least I would say compared to the first round, where it seemed a little bit more defined, the sync. And in this particular case, it's about the same as the first entry, but maybe like a slight downgrade on audio. And in this particular case, you know, I think that maybe Xbox could have taken a step forward, maybe taken another chance somewhere, you know, like from whether it's like a visual, from a visual standpoint, or from maybe like an audio standpoint, like maybe mess around with the audio a little bit, maybe get the sounds to stand out even more. Not necessarily from like a loudness, but like mess around with some audio effects, or just balance it a tad bit more, you know, just a little smidge more, and maybe it could have carried it a bit better. And like I said, that's just me getting nitpicky, but, you know, we break down the scoring for Xbox, and the lower echelons of the scoring comes in from mixing and mastering. That's where a lot of the lower end scores come in from our judges. So the judges are making it clear here, based off of this, that mixing and audio would be the category that Xbox needs to work on to propel this to the next stage. You know, if you could get to that next stage with the focus on audio mastering, and maybe take another chance or two on some effects. I mean, I think the effects in this particular piece were fine, and they served the purpose, and it works. But I think audio and mixing is the biggest downfall with this particular entry, because it was either the same from the first round, or it didn't take that step forward in audio.
I thought the music on this one was a little bit overwhelming. The sprays were good picks, but in some places they weren't clear enough to distinguish, and I even heard some distortion in some places. Like I put in my notes, the Doom chain gun, and very few effects aside from some preset transitions and increasing brightness or light scaling. And another big thing that I mentioned, this is a very long song, but didn't really change pace or bring too many new things to the table. As a result, it became admittedly kind of boring after the second minute mark. Going from pack to pack, the audio was relatively consistent, but it could have been blended better in terms of loudness. But I will say the Advanced Warfare part sounded absolutely glorious. Super clean audio. So I think a big problem that this thing had was blending audio across these. I said this in the first round for several people. Blending audio across these different packs, making everything consistent, whether that's an equalization, whether something's on the high end, on the low end, and that purely comes from the game's sound design. You have to compensate for that. You have to blend that well with your sync. You have to key out any distortion that you may have. You have to have an equal level of gunshot sounds and the music. And like I just said, I felt the music was a little bit overwhelming. It overwhelmed a lot of the gunshots in this video. But I will say, the part of the sync that looked the best was the last drop as it transitioned through the different packs, as it stayed very consistent and had some very good choices for the guns. Like I said before, this is a 4-minute and 32-second long sync. It doesn't change too much, and that, along with a little bit of distortion that I noticed from a couple of these different packs, and these very, I guess I can say, bare bones transitions. Not to say that they're bad or poor executed. They're just very bare bones. Like, a lot of them seem like they're just presets. They're very linear. In the second round for Kings of Sinks, a lot of these different small issues, they need to have detail, they need to have character, you need to have this charm and a lot of these different transitions, and have a balanced equilibrium with that visual with audio. And I think that it was lacking in that. But I would say, over Xbox's career, this is a massive improvement. He's made massive improvements over his time syncing, and this was, in contrast to just something a few years ago, very well done.
For me, the transition between each game really reminds me of my old KOS 1, and especially KOS 1, my first submission ever. The smooth transition between each game is really good. The accuracy itself as well is its own point, almost perfect in my opinion. But as it has been said, the lowest point is the audio mixing for me. Like, some sprays are way too loud, others are way too quiet, and as Stealth pointed out, I think that the song is a little bit over or winning over the sound of the guns themselves. But other than that, it's a really solid sync, and as I have said as well, it's Xbox's best so far, and I cannot wait to see what he does in the future.
I think the Xbox has a legitimate chance of making it to the finale in KOS 8. Like, he has a legitimate chance, and he's gonna do some great things, and I think he's gonna take what he, because I'm not sure if Xbox was expected to get to round 2 initially. Like, he and when he made it, he was super excited, but we're hoping to see him again. And now the expectations have been set for Xbox to get back here, maybe get a little further than last time in KOS 8. But great job all around from Xbox Syncs, and a very worthy entry. So now, going on to 13th place, and we're getting to the nitty-gritty of things. We're getting close to the heartbreak positions. I mean, at this point, even if you are eliminated and you're this close, 13th place was only 7 points off of making it to the next round, so it is pretty heartbreaking at this stage. But finishing in 13th place with a grand total of 60.19 points, we have Life Sound Studios. So, unfortunately, the Splatoon sinker meets his end here, but nevertheless, a great entry, in my personal opinion. I mean, what I think stopped this sync from getting that 7 extra points is, interesting enough, at least to me, I think that Life Sound Studios didn't really take any chances and just stayed within his comfort zone and made the sync shorter than the last time, because the last sync was about 3-4 minutes. This sync was 1:27. In my opinion, it's like it ended at 1:20, and it's like, oh man, I wanted to see more. I think we could have seen a lot more from Life Sound Studios. He was cooking, and I think if he just added a little bit more time, I think, in my personal opinion, could have made it into the finale, even with this style that he was going with. And obviously, no issues with variety. I've never seen so much variety in a sync in 1 minute and 27 seconds. Like, it's actually kind of crazy. Even better yet, even if we go through the first, I'd say, 10 seconds, you see like 10 to, you see double-digit gun variety. I don't think that's ever been done before. It's actually kind of crazy. Or at the very least, it's never been done to this level. And that's going to be one of the strongest strengths at Life Sound Studios. Keep that going into your future projects and what you do. But I think, again, the fact that Life Sound didn't really take too many chances with trying to expand upon that compared to the first round, and the sudden and abrupt end at 127 or at the 118 marker just kind of, it's kind of like a dick punch, honestly. It was like, oh man, that sucks, you know? It's I wanted to see more because this guy is great. I subbed to this guy personally. Like, I really like his unique style. It's completely different compared to a lot of things that we've seen. But I think that is what basically kept this sync, in my opinion, from it really propelling into the next round.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I have a lot of notes for this, and I'll just start for saying, excuse me, I love the variety in this. It's an awesome implementation of a lot of different things compiled into one. As 4Z said, within like 10 seconds, you've got 20 different clips up on screen that go hand in hand with the music. They're synced very well. And this makes one of the few that I score perfectly in the category of gun choice, solely because of the variety in here. And I want to make this clear for the other syncers as well, that variety is a huge strength in these submissions. Even if it doesn't fare so well in another category, if you have this much variety in a short period of time in your sync, I think that's a massive skill. And other things, other concepts like visualizers. I fucking love visualizers. This is just a personal thing. I love visualizers. In Vegas for a long time. I think I was the oddball in the room when I said last time that this was a bit weird to me, this type of sync, if I spoke during the sync, this concept. But it may just be because I'm not accustomed to the game, but it's it's a very abnormal vibe to be judging this kind of sync for whatever reasons. I guess just because of how different it is. Regardless, it was so well done. And it was a great sync. A lot of cool aspects. I was hoping to see some major visual effects enhancements. 4Z said this. In contrast to your previous submission, I wanted to see you jump outside of your comfort zone a little bit with some different effects. This doesn't really differ too much with your other syncs. Really hoping to see that. Really hoping to see some major visual effects enhancements from the previous one. And the audio can sound overly cluttered at times. This is one of my few gripes, like at 25 seconds. But it stays relatively simple. In that there isn't much to offer in the realm of transitions or flashy visuals outside of some masking, and that's what I was saying with it not having a lot of those different visual effects tones. You stayed within your comfort zone. I was looking for more of this, like some clever keyframing, but I just didn't see that here. The variety, though, was on another level, and I think that combined with some more heavy effects would do this style of sync very, very nicely in the future. But to finish this off, Escape mentioned that this was only 1 minute 26 seconds. With the amount of clips that are in here and the amount of time that I would imagine this would have taken, I mean, how long were people given? 2-3 months, something like that? I still find this very impressive. I think it's very well done for the amount of time that given to create this round 2 sync. And I know this is the speed round, but I do think that this was very well done.
And I'm just gonna throw this out there too to add to your point from earlier. I think it's actually really impressive. It doesn't sound like a conglomerate mess throughout the entirety of the sync. It easily could, with all the different sounds going on, all the different modulations of sound, editing, everything. It could easily be a conglomerate mess, but it's not. And I think that's what makes this entry even more impressive, is that he can mix that audio extremely effectively, even with 6 to 7 guns going on screen. We've seen it time and time again that it is incredibly difficult to audio master even 2 or 3 guns. Try doing 7. It's actually insanity.
Right, on the same screen too.
Just to add a couple of cents, because you pretty much have said all my thoughts, is that for me at least, specifically for me, I think that the song could have used like 0.1 to 0.3 decibels less, so I could hear a little bit more of the guns. But other than that, it's just a solid sync in terms of variety and accuracy itself, and it's on point. That's the other part that actually elevates this sync. But another thing that I could add to this is just a little bit more CC on the clips themselves. The effects are nice, but I think like the clips themselves are, I think, pretty much raw. They're not in any way edited themselves in terms of color, saturation, etc.
But overall, a fantastic entry from Life Sound Studios, and I want to see this guy compete again. I want to see him come back, because I'm not sure if we'll ever see a Splatoon syncer quite like him ever again, and I hope he comes back. So, good luck to you, Mr. Sorry, go ahead.
The theory has been proven.
Yes.
The theory has been proven. Splatoon works.
It
to
does.
syncs,
It
for
does.
syncs. So you just need to take that theory and use it forwards.
Well, definitely the best Splatoon syncer in my lifetime. I've never even seen anything come close to this, like with Splatoon and anything. So, great job to Life Sound Studios, and we hope to see him back in competition going into KOS 8. But with that, we now get into 12th place, who finished with a grand total of 63-26. And at this stage of the game, the top 12, like we've been talking about, even with 15th, 14th, and 13th, there's some really good syncs that had to get eliminated. And it's getting to the nitty-gritty now at this particular stage. And with that, in 12th place, we had Need for Syncs. And I'm going to be honest, I love the opener. It sounds really crisp, sounds really good. I think the audio mastering in the beginning, I think, was quite good. I love the CC. The visuals are quite good. But then I think in the second half, the thing that I think just tips this sync a tiny bit, and unfortunately I think it's just enough, is I think when it comes down to the audio mastering at the drop. And the audio mastering is not awful. It's just not... It doesn't necessarily 100% bring the piece home. And then when you go to the... There's certain parts where there's like missed potential, like certain beats are not synced, or at least it seems like certain beats are synced, but you get like a black screen at the 140 marker for like a good solid 3 seconds or so. And at this stage of the game, we don't really want to see too many full black screens unless it's, at the very end where you're fading to black, And I think it's just those little things that do end up costing a sync, at least if it's those little things, I think that'll end up costing the sync. And I do think, though, that Need for Syncs, this was a very great run from Need for Syncs. He's a pretty awesome syncer. This dude is pretty badass, and I want to see this guy come back again, 100%.
Yeah, for me, the effects and the accuracy themselves were really nice and really consistent throughout the entire video.
Good weapons choice, too.
Especially that. But the only thing that I think it takes a bit of the score. It's, again, the audio mixing. I feel like especially after the drop, the sprays, like you used the beat reloads on the sprays on the down right and sprays on the top left, and I could only hear the parts on the top left. The sprays on the bottom right were, for me at least, really low, that I couldn't hear them like that clearly. I had to watch the video like 2 or 3 times to start hearing them, because it's really difficult, to be honest, to have 4 guns, 2 sprays on top of each other at the same time. But it's something that I could not pass in terms of the scoring itself. But overall, a really, really good sync in terms of accuracy, and a really good run, to be honest.
Yeah, I too liked most of the effects. I'll say the 2D effects were too heavy. The glitch interlacing was a little too heavy as well. At a couple, and this is only a handful of parts. But again, that nitpicky thing on round 2, it was difficult to tell what guns were on screen instead of adding visual quality, it kind of took away. And again, I'm not hating on a lot of these. I think a lot of these effects were very well implemented. I think that if you had masked the center and blurred those effects, then used them as sort of a visionette, it would have been awesome. A clean implementation of the same effect. I'm particularly talking about the first half. That would have allowed everything underneath to still say visible and understandable. But aside from that, the real smart motion blur was a little bit too heavy. The glitch effects, though, were very cool and a very unique art style I'd like to see more of. And I think this sort of glitchy effect, when done very cleanly, which this is done relatively well, is very underrated and does wonders for creating an art style in a sync or any kind of content within the sync, adding value for that matter. Excellent pitch of the sprays at the beginning and the sequences. I loved that. That went so well with the music, and that's really hard to do with a lot of these sped up sprays, to find that perfect pitch. A lot of the times I find myself having to actually go into effects editor and change the pitch of certain sprays slightly just to get them to match. You did that so well with this, and the beginning and end sequences. Most definitely well done on the weapon choice there. Some sprays were a little bit harder to hear on drop. That could be due to their speed. As you speed up a lot of these sprays, it tends to become harder to hear. But going back to what I said earlier, there's so much clutter on screen that it becomes difficult to see the guns firing. I think if there's a little bit less of that, it would have been better. And that being the whole point of the video, that takes away a little bit from me. And I think that needed to be cleaned up a little bit. But I think you were definitely on the right track with your idea of visuals. But not gotten rid of, because they were very cool effects. But they just need some more thought put into them, into their implementation, how they work with the sync and its speed. Also, I'm a big fan of the fade out at the end. Creative little details like that just kind of tickle my brain. I will say,
they tickle
this
the
is
fancy, huh?
outside of. Yes, they do. They absolutely do.
They tickle
I
the
will
fancy.
say next time render in 4K, because this sync became really distorted on YouTube. But that's outside of
The scoring realm.
KOS. Yeah.
Mhm.
I hate YouTube's distortion. YouTube does us dirty so much with
Yeah.
the pixelation.
I agree.
YouTube's gay bitrate compression. But anyway, it was a very good submission, but those things that I mentioned did subtract some points from me. Very well synced, very good weapon choice. That's where you scored high from me. And in terms of visuals, those 2D effects could be keyed down slightly. You could go less heavy on them next time. But like I said, great submission, great sync.
I would say too, the song choice is also fantastic. I really like the song choice from Need. I mean, the song choice is something that's a little bit more underrated, but very, in terms of how difficult it is to come up with a good song for this competition, especially when in the beginning when you're up against like 40, 50 other people, and even in last time's competition, 60. So it's picking some good gems of songs that could go up against the big boys. This is definitely good. This is definitely a good choice, and great sync from Need. We hope to see him back again for another run. This guy could definitely make it to the finale. We move on now to what I'd like to say is the official heartbreak position. It is 11th position. There always has to be someone. The last round, in round number 1, Arise missed out on round 1 by just, I think it was less than a point, or 2 points. But now we have to do 11th place, who missed out in the KOS finale by 2 points. And this is going to be a brutal blow to the Russian gunsync community. In particular, we have Sturmdown. And Sturmdown has just missed the cutoff line. And like I said, this is by no means a bad gunsync. It is... Sturmdown definitely took some chances this round. Huge improvement compared to the first round. And I do gotta say it. We do hold Sturmdown to a very high standard. He's got the potential to win one of these events. And I think that he still can. And I will say this just from some things I really liked about the sync. I love the very unique sound in Overwatch. I believe that's May. I really like the use of May in the 40-second marker. I think it's pretty unique as a nice supporting sound. And then you're having some of the other shots on the side, which I think are great support pieces. Sturmdown goes to his bread and butter in particular with the use of Modern Warfare. And we see Infinite Warfare, lots of Call of Duties into the mix. And compared to his other projects, I've definitely seen better projects from him in the past, and it seemed like he rushed this a tad bit, but I just think, like I said, it's a byproduct of these syncs. It's really like do or die in basically every single category. And then when we break down the categories, we see that the lowest end of the scoring for Sturmdown was audio balancing. 3 judges gave him a below 5 in audio mastering and mixing, and I think that's what ultimately, if he honed in on the audio mastering just a little bit more, that would have given him the extra 2 or 3 points potentially needed to get him over the hump.
The sync itself is such a good entry, with good flow between each game, being silky smooth, and the effects as well are really, really good. But yeah, it's just the audio mixing. It's surprising for me to have given him such a low score, because I tried to hear it, but it's just after the drop, half of it was missing. You couldn't hear quite a bit. Like the vocal sound, the vocal mixing was good. You could hear it, but after you finish with Overwatch, it's just the quality just dropped for me, and I couldn't pass that up, to be honest. I tried to make it work, but it was just too low for me. It would have been better if he had a little bit more time in the oven.
Yeah, I have pretty much the same opinion. But I'll start with saying, this is Sturmdown. Awesome, as you can expect from Sturmdown. Awesome visuals, super clean transition. Everything is flowing so well. Great transitions, and like Forzy was saying with May, pitch shifting on that, and I'm pretty sure Sturmdown has gone to actually going and using FL Studio to do his pitch shifting, which is great. Honestly, Vegas pitch shifting sucks. That's the best thing he ever did. It's flawless, and he was very critical of himself when I was talking to him about his submission. In the quality of that pitch shifting, it was done so well, and that would have scored insanely highly from me if you had the rest of your audio sorted out. This is something I never would have expected to see from Sturmdown, was audio issues, because in virtually every category, from me, he scored at most it's 0.2 points below maximum scoring. It was done so well visually, and weapon choices sorted out so well. But immediate examples that I can think of right here, I'm going back rewatching it. Infinite Warfare sprays, the build was really good, but there was just a little bit too quiet, the actual gunshots, to where it was just hard to, it became hard to distinguish. And I mean, that's the drop. That's where the majority of your scoring is going to be, that's where the majority of your sync is going to be focused on from judges, is the drop. And all of those single at least most of the single shots were pretty well done. They were very coherent, especially the silenced shotguns, the silenced snipers. There was even some pitch shifting there that sounded so good. But it's those sprays that just absolutely killed this sync. And I don't want to be discouraging or anything, because the rest of the sync was fantastic. But that is what really, that's the reason that this sync is that this sync is 11th place, is because of that audio. And I would have never expected to see that from Sturmdown. I'm sure it's an anomaly, but if he had cleaned that up easily, in my own opinion, this sync is easily top 3 for this round.
He could have easily dethroned the next one.
Absolutely.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And that would have been history in KOS.
Yeah. And I mean, that's like I said before, immediate examples that come to my head. I have wrote down here Black Ops 2, Infinite Warfare, even a handful of single shots were just lower volume than they should have been. And this could have been such a top-notch, almost perfect scoring sync without those problems, and that ultimately stole that from him.
While this is indeed a heartbreak, I will say Stormdown has made some history in the past, and we know that Stormdown doesn't give up. He keeps fighting, and compared to where he was in that first round, or where he bounced back, got that sync, and he managed to get himself into the second round. Him only being one spot off, he's putting up some great fights, and he's putting up some great entries for us. Like I said again, it's really, we're getting to the nitty gritty. So.
Oh yeah, some of the best syncs that I can think of immediately in my head are from Stormdown. The guy's my hero, man. Mm-hmm. It really breaks my heart to see him place 11th.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I said, that we had to have some really good gun syncs eliminated, and that is the way the scoring has come out. So now we move on to 10th place, the very first person that's going to be moving on to the Grand Season 7 finale. These 10 names will all be moving on, but in 10th place, who beat Stormdown out by about 2 points, with a solid 67-93. A little bit surprising that he fell this far down the leaderboards, but he did make it to the finale nevertheless. It is Dr. Jayton. And Dr. Jayton decided to... It looked like he did a continuation of the sync that he did before. Very similar style, almost the same backgrounds and backdrops for the majority of it. And that was until we got to the 31-second marker, when he did a good old classic assembly line effect, but also like music bars at the same time. I guess that was the motive there from Dr. Jayton. And the disco ball on the top, great effects all around from Dr. Jayton. However, I think that this particular sync didn't score with the upper echelon of his big rivals, because this was a relatively clear downgrade from round number 1, and it had a pretty short jump cut at the 127 marker. And to me, this tells me that Jayton was doing a sync, and either he ran out of time or he just couldn't do more of the sync, and he submitted it, and it seems like it's just a unfinished product in some cases. Or like it was still a really good, very strong, pretty much almost perfect 1 minute 28 seconds for the most part. But then when 128 comes out and it does the jump cut, that, I think, in my opinion, immediately drops the scoring down quite significantly. And surprisingly enough, the lowest scores that Jayton was getting was under the technical complexity and composition. And Jayton basically scored 10s, 9s, and 8s on every single category except for technical complexity. And I think that with Jayton going into the final round here, I think he's got to get back to peak form when that finals come. And I think that this was a byproduct of the speed round, almost costing Jayton a spot in the finale.
Well, Jayton's overall accuracy in sound mixing, even the song itself that he pretty much built from scratch, is one of the best. Yeah, the complexity of the sync is the biggest downfall in this submission. Compared to round 1, it's pretty much everything after the drop is just the same. The effects are great, the best in the competition as always. But compared to his round 1 submission and his overall work throughout KOS, for me it was quite a downfall between everything. And I feel like it's too repetitive and nothing else happens, even though it looks pretty.
Yeah, I thought it was a really unique art style. It is basically a part two of the first submission, a reboot of the round one submission. And it's a really cool concept. I love the alternate dimension that Jayton likes to create with these different syncs and submissions. Admittedly, though, it did become pretty repetitive. I was waiting for the scene to change or shift, but it really never did. Basically, an entire minute of the same sequence. Not to discredit it or anything. It's great. Very cool effects. I'm not even sure how you create these type of 2D effects. I would imagine After Effects or something. But it's still a high scoring sync in the other categories because of the creative aspects. But 38 seconds of the exact same thing in a sync, only a minute 35. Really, I mean, it takes away from, and we're talking a lot about variety in this round. It takes away from your ability to have more variety, whereas you could have had maybe some repetitive sequences like this, but a different set of them, like 4 different scenes, rather than what we see in the end, which is, like I said, 38 seconds of basically the same scene. But it did have a lot of very creative aspects. I loved the use of the R3K, and this is a very cool song that I guess he mixed. I guess it's a mashup he made. It's very cool, but technical complexity, that's its own category. And here, if there were several scenes like this, it would have scored much higher. But from me, that's where this sync took a hit, was the complexity and the variety.
And we know that Dr. Jayton knows how to cook up some great syncs, so I'm not necessarily worried about if in the finale Jayton's going to create something that is going to surpass the quality of this or even his first sync. I'm definitely not worried about anything like that. I think it's just like from a time constraint and time pressure, it kind of just, I'm worried about him rushing the product, and we know he knows how to get it done. He's a champion. He knows how to get it done. So I'm thinking that Dr. Jayden, coming into this finale, I think he's gonna have his work cut out for him. But I think that in order to catch back up with his rivals, he just has to cook. Cook baby cook. But overall, it's the visual effects and the audio and basically everything but those little things basically carried his sync pretty far. And if it weren't for the cut at the end of the sync, or the relative repetitiveness, I'd say like this reminds me of like a sync that's good enough just to pass round 1, but in the second round. And we've seen a lot of those kind of syncs, but in this particular case, this sync is good enough just to get into that finale, but he's going to have to step it up if he wants to win this event. So finishing in 9th place with a grand total of 70.96 points. The bounce back for the Shadow Gamer continues, and Shadow Gamer has been doing a great job in KOS 7, putting out some certified bangers this year. And compared to KOS 6, like we've been talking about, he's been brutally disappointing in KOS 6, but in KOS 7, he has delivered each and every time. And I love when Shadow Gamer does these very long multi-cod gun syncs. These are classic multi-cod vintage syncs that we used to see a lot back in the day, Season 1 and Season 2, when basically almost every syncer synced COD, and that was basically it for the most part. I have to tell you, man, Shadow Gamer's on his game. He absolutely cooked once again. And one of my favorite effects was at the 140 marker. I love his variety of CC that he uses and just how much of a pure banger it is, like visually. I really love that. And I just love his weapon choices. He has very good variety. There's a good amount of games in between. He transitions between the songs quite fine, and like I said, not much else to say, but Shadow Gamer definitely cooked this round. He cooked up a good old gourmet meal, and once again, Shadow Gamer returns to the finale.
Yes, indeed. These mashed potatoes were delicious. This is a really, really good submission. It was relatively simple, but is very balanced in terms of audio and visuals. It may have been a bit too much for me at 140, but the sequence immediately after, where it's a little bit more coherent and it changes hue a little bit, to me that looked a lot better. And it, at 140, it just seemed a little bit too bright to follow in that section, but that's just my subjective opinion. The other sections were relatively simple. I think I needed to see some more volumes on the sprays for sure, especially in MW2. In terms of other aspects like the visual effects, like I was just talking about, it's pretty decent. Nothing really stood out, and I saw some pixelated distortion at the beginning song with Modern Warfare 3, but that's YouTube's compression things. We all love that. Where you got a lot of points from me was at Modern Warfare 2022 from 315 to 342. Awesome choice in guns, great balanced visuals, super satisfying to watch. It was very well done in that section.
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit of the same things that Stealth said. The sprays could have used a little bit more volume. The song a little bit less volume in those parts. But the other part that I feel like it also should have gotten a little bit more volume was the first Modern Warfare 2019 part. I think it's the 250 mark. I feel like I hear more of the song than the actual guns. They still sound quite a bit crisp, but it's on that line, that really line where you can either lose the guns or lose the song. But other than that, the transitions were really good between games, smooth as hell, and yeah, the title delivered. Mashed potatoes comeback. It was a comeback.
And he did indeed cook those mashed potatoes. He cooked 100%. This is a nice reemergence of Shadow Gamer. We hope that he can come up with another banger in the finale. I'm sure that one of the big things that Shadow Gamer is going to have a hard time doing in the finale is being able to compete with the top 5, top 6 in this competition. And that comes down to, I think, Shadow Gamer. Just one last thing I'm going to mention is, I think Shadow Gamer is slowly but surely starting to come out of that comfort zone. And by the standards that Shadow Gamer is going by, if you guys remember the Black Gamer, TBG, this is probably the closest syncs that we're getting to the old school TBG. And Shadow Gamer with the editing, it obviously adds a nice little modern flair to it with the CC touches, and not to mention the length of the gun sync. 6 minutes and 20 seconds. I think it's the longest submission that we've had in this competition so far. And in contrast, the minimum or the maximum time in the video for the submission would be 6 minutes and 30 seconds. That's the maximum time limit according to the rules. So just throwing that out there. That Shadow consistently syncs pretty good for 6 minutes and 20 seconds and getting into the finale. That's no small feat whatsoever. Congratulations to Shadow Gamer. You're once again going to get a chance to fight for a title, and joining alongside you and Dr. Jayton in the finale, who finished 5 points ahead of you, finishing with a 75-99. And once again, he returns to the finale. He was so close to winning it last time round, and Sinks is going to get another opportunity to win it again. He makes it into the finale with his multi-game gun sync. And the song choice is really unique. I really like how it's different compared... It's most certainly different compared to everybody else. And yeah, it might get a little messy in terms of the CSGO part, the first CSGO part. I love the innovation of this sync. The third-person speed syncing is pretty good, which actually unironically sounds... The CSGO parts sound better in the third-person part compared to the first part when it first pops up. And the new CSGO sounds are very difficult to sync with. Obviously, not as many of the CSGO sounds sound as unique as they used to in years past. And to be able to sync CSGO it takes a lot of skill. I tried doing it once and I failed miserably. To keep that into perspective, and Sinks does it really well, and I really love the Modern Warfare parts. My personal favorite part is the Infinite Warfare part in terms of the sound design at the 22-second marker and until it finishes up at around the 34, 35 second marker around there. But I have to say, Syncs, just like Shadow Gamer, he cooked up a pretty good sync as well. And we know how good Syncs is at innovating his syncs, and he definitely has the capabilities to create a masterpiece when it comes into the finale. And once again, he's going to get a shot to do exactly that.
I feel like the sync itself starts in a traditional way, like beat, synths, everything else it's every gun works towards an end goal. But after the drop hits, it breaks up. It doesn't follow a structure anymore. For that, I had to deduct a couple of points out of accuracy just because of that. But it just works. That's as Todd Hallward said. It just works, and with this song, especially being such a high-speed song, like everything just happens in 1 second, and you cannot even try to follow the song itself. Every game works, even CS:GO in third person, but when you transition from that to first person, the first section, I felt like a little bit of the speed that the song had was lost. But other than that, the color corrections, the subtitles themselves, they really follow that aesthetic that a Fentanyl song has. And well, you say that it were rushed, but for me, it really, really worked in pair with the song. Some guns, I felt like they were a bit too quiet. I couldn't hear them well enough, but another were a tad bit too loud. But overall, it was a solid sync. And just another small comment at the end. Fuck you, Sings. You got me on a fentanyl beat.
Yeah, he said in the description that this was rushed, but it was still very well done. Really cool, trippy effects, psychedelic effects. As per seems a relatively recent signature Easy Sync style, I'd like to see a lot more of these types of videos in the future. I like this different style of pace. It takes me back to my old revamped sync by Fatal Force. It's, really fast paced with some intermediate sections in there, and it's a pretty significant shift from your round one submission, and it's well executed, especially with such a small time frame. But at some parts it became a little difficult to distinguish sounds from one another. For me personally, the vocals did a lot to drown out the shots that would otherwise be more distinguishable. If I were to make any grievance, I would say I would like to see a return to EDM. Nothing against the style. I do like the style, but Easy is so tuned in that category. I think that's where he really shines. Other than that, I like I said, I like the glitchy effects, the visual appearance. It could have had a little bit more depth in terms of transitions and flow. I didn't like the song, but it's definitely synced well. I think something else that lingers more on the higher end would have given you more opportunities with making audio more clear and distinguishable. This is something that has it's a song that has, it's made deliberately with a little bit of distortion and bass, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that's where you really shine with audio tuning and that sort of thing. Completely outside of visually, completely within the aspects of audio. I think that songs on the higher end, typically, like say a Riot song or a Virtual Riot, would have. It's just better, and this is just a completely subjective opinion, but that allows for you to make those individual shots more distinguishable. But I'm just yapping at this point. It's a great submission, fantastic effects. I really love the trippy effects. I loved that third person section. And I'd hope to see more of this. I really hope to see more of these types of effects from Easy in the coming future, even outside of K.
And I'm just going to throw it out there, too. Something I thought was really unique, too, the topography edit that he did at the third person marker. You'll notice that the words are changing fonts super quickly, but it's also pretty smooth. And Syncs, I know it's the little things, but the little things do matter in terms of getting yourself over the hump. Synx is willing to take some risks and to try out some different things, and that's what I really love about this particular sync. It's definitely wacky compared to all the other submissions in terms of the song choice, but once again, Synx is willing to go that extra mile, and that's what makes him a very dangerous opponent going into the finale, and he definitely could make something happen. So very well done for Synx. Great submission. We're going to move on now to 7th place, and only finishing less than a point ahead of Synx in 7th with a grand total of 76.93. We have Shibuya Ren, as Shibuya Ren has made it to the finale for the first time, and I think this is his first competition as well, but do not fool you. Shibuya Ren is a veteran in the gun sync game. He's been around for years, and he's made it. And I love how he does this is a classic mashup sync, and with a lot of effects. I really like the effects that are used to transition from scene to scene. Shibuya is very good at transitioning from one scene to another in a very smooth fashion. I love that. The sounds sound crisp, sounds great. The overall piece has a lot of different games. We got some Overwatch in there. We got some, I believe Modern Warfare is in the mix, and I think some Advanced Warfare as well. And another thing I really like, this is going to be a small thing. I don't usually notice a lot of people, or at least back in the old days, a lot of people didn't use the EM1 reload sound that much. And I'm glad to see that it's being used out there. That's just a personal thing, at least for me. But anybody that could use that very effectively is something that gets points on my book, and I love seeing it used very well. Obviously not being overused like the EM1 lasers themselves, as we all have seen in previous competitions, the overuse of that in seasons past, but actually shooting the laser, but not enough of them actually reloading it. But that's me getting nitpicky with and maybe glazing the EM1 usage. But in general, I really like the usage of the weapons in this sync, and pretty nice variety all around, and once again, a very good classic mashup from relatively new syncer on the scene for the competition, but someone who's a veteran at the game.
Really, really nice visuals. This was probably one of my favorites, just because of how well everything transitioned through. I'll get this out of the way early though. Like we've been seeing with other syncers, sprays, particularly on the first drop, and he corrected this in the second drop, but there was just too quiet. I don't remember what the name of it is called, but those Doom guns in the beginning, or not in the beginning, but on the first drop, and a couple of the Infinite Warfare guns were just a little bit. They needed a little bit more volume to become distinguishable, but in terms of this kind of artistic style, I love this. Everything is so smooth. Everything is so soft and flowing. It's fantastic. This is what I aspire to get my syncs to look like, and it was so well executed. Both of the drops, everything transitions so smoothly. At this point, I'm just glazing this guy, but this was a great submission outside of those problems with sprays and their volume. And I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the beautiful pitch shifting of the M1 Garand. I think that we're all suckers for good pitch shifting, and that was extremely well done.
I mean, the only negative thing that I could say is audio mixing, but not well. In some guns, not throughout the entire thing. The sprays specifically were really nice. I could hear them perfectly, but I think that most of the audio problems are just on the kicks and the snares. You use, especially in the Modern Warfare 2019 parts, I felt like, especially in the section from 39 seconds to a minute and 4, I feel like the sniper rifle, the Hadir, it's way too low, that you cannot hear it at all for a part that it's really good, even though it's simplistic as hell. But other than that, color corrections, transitions, everything is just amazing. The flow between each game, between each scene, it's really good, and it's just an overall great submission.
Very well done to Shibuya Rin. We wish you the best of luck in your first finale, and I've actually spoke with this guy a couple times, and he's really excited to be in this competition, and he's the first of many Chinese sinkers that have made it into this finale. If people did not figure this one out already, there's gonna be a lot of sinkers from China in this finale, and he is the first one to make it. So with that, we go on to 6th place. And speaking of sinkers from China, with a 78-14. And I'll be honest, I think this is a huge upset. And this guy, Lakewind, he has impressed me so far with basically every submission that he's put out there. And this is a first-time competitor, but not really a seasoned veteran like Shibuya Rin, who's been doing sinking for a while. Lakewind has not been doing sinking that long, and maybe, I must say, Lakeland has absolutely been cooking this round himself, and I love the opener. The style of the sink is so good. I love using the staff from Origins. I love the usage of that. That's a very rare weapon to see in gun sinks. You don't really see it that often. I mean, at least I personally have not seen it myself. And it just, the sounds in general, like the sound design is absolutely dynamite. I love the sound design at the first drop at the 41-second marker. Sounds really good. And just throughout the piece, great variety. I really love the variety of guns that are being used, the variety of games. Transitioning from game to game in a very quick succession, but also smooth as hell. It's beautiful. The only critique I really have for this particular sink is the sound design with the Advanced Warfare Shotgun in the very beginning, and the USPS at the second build, from the first build up, comparing that to the second build up, at then the 120-second marker with the silenced pistol. The sound is not necessarily I mean, this is just me getting nitpicky, but the sound is not necessarily differentiated to sound different than the tech. Maybe you could have differentiated the sound a little bit more to make it sound more distinctive, because the USPS has like a different sound tone compared to the tech, and you would think that the tech was being used somewhere in that clip. And then when you go to the visual marker at the 134, 136 marker, the black and white visual marker, and for the about 8 to 9 seconds that you use that, I think making the image just a tad bit sharper would have made it cool, similar to how you made the image sharper at around the 148 marker. But like I said, that's just me getting nitpicky. But overall, I love the visuals. I love the use of effects. In my personal opinion, the effects is a 10 for me, and it's just a lot of cool effects. The transitions are fucking fantastic. The sound design overall for like 95% of the sink is fantastic, and I can see that there's even improvements in the sound design at the third build up with the Black Ops 3 sniper building up to the final drop. And then a very interesting drop. The second drop is not what I expected necessarily for that drop to be for that, but I love the use of the jammer and the reload sound for the staffs. I really love that. Just really unique, cool sound design, and overall, just a great piece from Lakewind. And Lakewind is definitely making some noise as a potential sleeper pick for the championship, in my opinion.
I am absolutely blown away by this submission. Like, compared to his round 1 submission, it's an 11 in terms of quality. Like, from start to finish, I was hooked. The entire thing felt like a rhythm game. I think that was what he was aiming for. The gun choices were perfect, and the only thing that kept it from being a perfect score, like my score itself was a 9.8 out of 10, was just 2 points for audio mixing, just because some guns I felt like they could have gotten a little bit more of their sound file extended, and they could have used a little bit more audio gain. But if I have to choose the moment where I was sold on the sync, I think it has to be the section from 1 minute and 7 seconds to a minute and 22. Like that section for me, that was it. It wasn't the start or the finish. They were good, but for me, the perfect way to represent this sync is just that section. I don't know. It's something that clicked with me when I saw it for the first time, and it lives rent free in my head.
I had a little bit of a different opinion here. I liked this sync. I really liked a lot of the visuals. There's some really, really clever keyframing in here and some very, very unique transitions that I haven't even seen before on other syncs. But I noticed some, most notably, I noticed a lot of audio spikes, particularly on the AK-47. The sprays on not the first section of the first drop, but as it transitioned into the, what is that? Those dual guns from Advanced Warfare, I think the XM53 or something like that.
Is it the Atlas, the pistol, or the?
It's the dual miniguns.
The miniguns. The XMGs.
Yeah.
The XMGs.
Okay, the XMG. Okay, the XMGs. It just seemed like sprays were a little quiet there, and there was even some resample on the sprays. The effects were put over them, so it's not the easiest to notice. I don't know, maybe it went past some eyes, but it's something that I noticed. Maybe again, there's a lot of nitpicky things, and as you advance towards these later rounds, that I mean, I personally will definitely notice, and it could just be due to in terms of the volume of the sprays, their coherency. It seemed like a lot of them were faded out. A lot of people are doing this now, fading out sprays. Now, I'm sure it does sound good with some songs. I don't think it sounded good here. I think that fading out sprays is something that you should stay away from. But a lot of these, outside of that, a lot of these single shots and usage of these more unique weapons, like the staff from Origins. I've never seen the staff from Origins used in a gunsync before. And not only you use the shot, but you use the, I don't know if you consider it a reload, but I guess, yeah, the reload. It's very well implemented. Very, very cool little piece of variety. For me, it's eye candy to see that sort of thing in syncs. And in terms of the second drop, super cool. That takes me back to Jayton's kind of style. I'm not even sure how you do these effects, but super, super unique. Very, very cool. And I really, really liked how on the third drop it kind of mashes, I don't know if you should say mashes these two different concepts. It basically builds upon the first drop on the second, not the second drop, but the third drop, the final drop. And there's all of this super unique keyframing and warp perspective going on. It's very, very, very cool. But what really took a lot away from you from me was mixing. I will say that chroma keying on the final section was okay. It was relatively decent. It was synced extremely well. Very, very. It lingered on the high end a lot, and that's what really. That's what sounds the best to me. And all of these different glitchy effects. But I'll say that where it fell off though was at, I'm trying to find the timestamp here, 304 to 320, I guess. It just kind of fell off. You just kind of lost the plot. You lost the plot. It just didn't sound good, that section with the rapid fire shots. But so like I said, I had a little bit of a different opinion than everybody. But visually, this was most definitely top notch.
And I think that Lakeland, a lot like with syncs, I think he's willing to take some chances. And he definitely took some pretty big leaps in this sync compared to the last one. Honestly, Lakeland's really impressed me personally. From there's not too many people that come up as rookies to the competition with not as much gunsync experience compared to a lot of the other people that are left in the field, and just wow us like that, which is very impressive. So I think Lakeland's gonna be a surprise sleeper in the finale. But speaking of potential finale picks that could win it all, and someone that has a great chance of becoming a champion here, and who is a veteran at the game, finishing in 5th place with a 79-78. We have the king of Rainbow Six Sinks, because now he's the only Rainbow Six Sinker left, Bravo 6. And Bravo 6, while it could be characterized as a rather simple approach compared to the remainder of the sinkers that are left, this is the, I guess, simple and effective that's done in finale standards, because it still has technical complexity. It is still very difficult, and I would say that the one thing that kind of holds this sync back from potentially winning it all is what we've been talking about, is technical complexity, which honestly is one of the biggest themes, one of the biggest surprise themes in this competition so far. But Bravo 6, with the Rainbow Six sprays in particular, the fart sprays, that is his bread and butter. His sound design in Rainbow Six Siege is pretty much unmatched. I've never seen anybody in Rainbow Six match his sound design besides Jabber Turtle. And in fact, I think it is Bravo that has been influenced by Jabber Turtle to do the sound design, and Bravo 6 just impresses yet again. An absolutely fantastic sync. I love the pirate theme. Maybe some more effects. I would have taken some more chances if I were Bravo 6 to try to, add some cool effects into the mix. I would have taken some chances with this if I was him. Maybe try to get a couple extra bonus points in there. Or that, or maybe he's got the right idea and he's just saving up for the finale and he's going to try to do something crazy in the finale. We'll see. But, if I were Bravo 6 going into the final round, I would focus on trying to take some chances and go for something that maybe he hasn't tried to go before. But this is tradition. But either way, this sync is traditional Bravo 6. Just pure Bravo 6. Simple, effective, but yet extraordinarily strong entry.
Yeah, it really is. Bravo 6 always kicks ass when he syncs some kind of pirate theme song. He's done this before in other KOSs. It's something about these pirate theme songs, and he never disappoints. Was a fantastic submission with the amount of time that was given. I really appreciate how anticipated the drop came during the build, and the quality of the sprays were always glazing his sprays, and the single shots, of course. Everything is so coherent, everything is so crisp, and of course the effectiveness of the transitions and the screen pumps and the various effects. This was so well done. I'm all over it. This will be the highest scoring sync for me during the second round. I only had a few gripes and a few small takeaways from each category where you could have expanded with what you already had in terms of visual effects and transitions. Admittedly, several times the same transition or effect was reused. There's nothing wrong with that, especially considering how well done and suited they are, but to expand or maybe come up with something new and different for something that already existed earlier in the sync that may have been a completely separate concept will always give you a boost from me. I'm just trying to say that I like that different variety. Expand on something rather than just copy and pasting something from one section that may be effective, may look really good, to another section of the song that is, say, identical, to expand upon that and add something similar, or rework the transition completely. And this is just something small. This is really just more so, I guess, advice, not to critique any of this stuff as mediocre. This is an awesome thing, and I'm sure PGS will mention this, but technical complexity and composition, this is its own category. During the beginning until the drop, it's pretty medium paced. It doesn't really feel like it matches the song too much. There's some really quick screen pumps and stuff like that, and it doesn't really get boring, but there could have been more, I feel, visually, that you could have added to match the pace of the song a little bit better, because otherwise it's just some quick screen pumps, really, and it's a lot of idle time. But this was an awesome, I've already said this is an awesome submission. This is great. I was really looking forward to Bravo 6. I'm really glad that he was able to submit this year. And I'm really hoping that he can for round 3.
Yeah, for me, this sync itself is just an absolute mastery of sound. Like, with such a hard hitting song, that is this hold on, I'm gonna redo it. I lost my train of thought there. The submission, it's a really good mastery of sound, and with this song particularly being such a hard hitting one, it really elevates the entire product at the end. I feel though that like the sync could have played a little bit more into the pirate theme, but that is also, we're also entering the realm of pack limitations. If he can record his own packs, so if you have to work with what you have, so in this case being the Rainbow Six Siege clips and the Modern Warfare Remastered clips, I felt like at least the color correction and the subtitles themselves, not that the typography itself, which it plays really good into the theme, but the color on itself, it gives you a little bit more of a feel of this. And well, at least with pirates, you're talking about a little bit more brownish colors, more darker colors that could have made the whole thing have the aesthetic that the song implies. But other than that, those small gripes, really, it's a really good sync on itself. And as Stealth said at the end of his comment, yeah, the start could have used a little bit more secondary clips in terms of at least to keep the viewer entertained, or well, not leave all the entertainment that the viewer has on the sync to the two clips and the subtitles themselves. Which is not to say that it was bad. It's just that it could have used that more to elevate it even further. But overall, it's just such a really good sync, and I really want to get my try on that song.
Yeah, honestly, me too. I mean, I love the song choice. It's definitely one of the best parts of the sync is his song choice by far. Like, I love Bravo 6 is always very good at choosing songs and making a banger out of them, especially from an audio standpoint. Maybe just Rainbow Six Siege is a low key just a great game to sync in almost any game if it's synced like this. So fantastic stuff from Bravo 6. So he's gonna get another shot at a championship. We'll see how that goes. We move on to 4th place with a grand total of, this sinker only finished less than 1/10 of a point ahead of Bravo 6 with a 79.87. We have the only Vietnamese sinker remaining, and that is Ryu. Ryu is now the last Vietnamese sinker standing. And honestly, that's a pretty crazy stat considering that, not too long ago, Vietnam was the top of the boards in terms of the number of sinkers that have competed. And he's the last one. And Ryu's done a pretty good job in this competition so far, creating some really good sinks. But I will say, in this particular sync, he does take about 22 seconds to get going. It's a personal gripe of mine when sinkers take that long to get into a song without really much to show for it. Just, them running up to the shooting spot. I think it's just lazy, in my personal opinion. But I leave that as a personal subjective gripe for now. But when we get to the actual sync itself, I think that the weapons choices are fantastic. I really like the song choice. Sound design is great. The effects are really cool. I love the shadow split effect at the 102 marker. And it actually, interestingly enough, it develops. Like, there's one part of the shadow that you see split that has less black in it and has less of a dark color towards the beginning of the sync. And then when you progress through the sync, it gets a little bit darker and you can see more of that split. And I really love the very unique placement of the weapons and the size of the screens. I think that's very unique to this sync. The sync itself is just smooth all the way around. Not really much for me to say on this particular sync, but very well done to Mr. Ryu, and you cooked up pretty well. And last but not least, the effect at the 241 marker, the 5-way the 5 screens towards the end there with the red background really pops. I love that. It's really cool. And just overall, a great sync. And low-key, another one of those sleeper picks that could snipe it out from somebody, you know?
Especially for me, the Modern Warfare 3's tag stance use was really good to shake things up. I think it's when I played that game, I really feel like you could get a lot of mileage out of the tag stance because it actually gives you not only a different sound effect when you're firing from the hip and you're aiming, but it just helps the flow of the syncs. The only things that made me scratch my head a little bit were at the start. I don't know if it's because of pack limitations again, but it felt abrupt. The change of the whole start of the scene where he's walking, aiming to the precise location. He aims. The song is about to start. You get ready. Okay, so he's gonna start with Scar H, and then it suddenly changes to the Hadir out of nowhere. I felt like if he were recording the pack himself. Actually, let me check because I have the video. Okay, so there's no link for the Gunsync pack, so I'm implying that he is recording this. Either way, the choice of starting with the Scar H and then suddenly and abruptly changing to the Hadir, it threw me off a little bit. But other than that, it's just this a little bit of audio mixing as always. At the drop itself, I felt like the sprays were really loud and the secondary beats were initially hearable. But then after the Glock came up, I felt like I lost a little bit of the sounds of the beat. But it wasn't that much, but it was a little bit noticeable. But overall, the sync itself, it's really good, and the effects and the transitions of overall are really, really good.
I'm right there with you. I thought this had beautiful audio. It was the perfect level in the high end. So very simple. It wasn't altered that much. Like, it's very easy to go in here and start messing with either equalization or some kind of filters that Vegas has, and you end up completely skewing the original sound of guns. And I say that because some other syncers have done that in this competition, and it takes some points away. This, you left it unaltered, but maybe it's just the packs, but you kept it such a consistent level in the high end. All of these different packs, there's 7 different packs in here, and it flows perfectly in terms of visuals and audio. And I loved the super fitting atmospheric vibe that you made to match the song. I'm not even really a fan of weeb music, but if you'd even call it that, maybe I'm just being an asshole. I don't know. But this was fantastic. My few complaints include, I guess, a couple of missed opportunities where some very intricate transitions could have been used instead of a fade or just a simple warp chroma effect. And also it could have had more visual candy, like swish pans on the drops and stuff like that. Other than that, I loved the small details like the light links and the flowing particles. I really hope that we see more of that. I think that adds a lot of value. It just, and I know this isn't like a trade or anything, but it adds like a professional level to everything. It's like a cherry on top, adding little things like that, particle effects, flame effects, anything like that to your sync. It's another added visual aspect that just further polishes your visuals. And even these I don't know what you'd call it, I know it has a name in Magic Bullet looks, but these black bars that come across on I guess that's the second drop starting at 2 minutes, it looks super cinematic, super clean. The visuals are super clean. Everything is so soft, smooth, and flowing. This was a fantastic sync. This was awesome. And it scored perfectly from me in terms of mixing and mastering. If anybody is curious on what at least I'm looking for in terms of audio quality and mixing, I think that this is ultimately the goal. I mean, yes, PGS mentioned that the sprays were a little bit too loud. particularly on the first drop. I guess they could have been lowered a little bit, but I think that they were a very good volume to not. They weren't too overly loud for me to overwhelm the other gunshots, and they were such a good pitch that they mirrored the music really, really well, while not drowning it out completely and still sounding good. And yeah, that's all for me. This was one of my favorites this competition.
And Ryu is sinking like a championship contender right now. And I'm not sure how long this guy's been sinking. I've been told that this guy's relatively young into the sinking age. He's one of the upcoming, compared to the veteran Vietnam sinkers that are out there, he's definitely the one that has the least amount of experience compared to the rest of the Vietnamese sinkers that have been sinking in these competitions for quite some time. But I gotta tell you, Ryu just blew them all out of the water. And this guy is a title threat, 100%. And I think that, like you've been talking about, I think if he continues to take chances and make things look even more professional, like with the falling particles, and if he takes that next step, he could be very dangerous. And not just from a visual front, from an audio front too. Like I think this guy, along with the last guys that are out there, I mean, I think every single one can challenge and has a legitimate claim to winning this, especially with the amount of effects that they've been using, how many chances a lot of these guys have been taking, and on top of that, just great audio. And Ryu has done fantastic audio in this piece, and like Stelt said, it's one of my favorites too in terms of the audio so far. And we'll see how Ryu does in the finale, but also challenging Mr. Ryu in the finale will be our third place finisher as well with a 82.52. And he finished inside the top 5 in round number 1. And he will finish in the top 5 once again. Timeless Future. And you know how we talked about with Ryu Sync, it takes 20 seconds for the sync to get going. Timeless Future has the same problem. However, there seems to be a lot more going on to keep the viewer entertained as the sync goes on. And the visuals, I think these visuals were made completely from scratch. And in terms of this particular round, I think Timeless Future could really compete up with maybe some of the visuals that Neo did in round number 1. I think that Timeless Future could challenge that, honestly. And especially if he keeps making stuff like this, I think it's really cool. Like Timeless Future. And Timeless Future did all of these visuals in a not so slow time frame. He did this very quickly. And it looks fantastic. Like, obviously, we're talking about a lot of the visuals in this sync. And the visuals in this sync definitely carry this piece to the heights that it does. But at the same time, the audio is pretty good. I would work on maybe trying to raise some of the volume of the guns that are being used for different differentiation. I mean, it still sounds really good, but I think just adding that little bit more might bring it over the top. And flexing the setup as well, that is a massive flex if I've ever seen one. I wish I had that kind of money for that. And the train effect at the 112 marker is personally one of my favorites. I just love that visually. It looks really damn cool. And then adding a little bit of what Easy Syncs did as well with the third person syncing. And, funny enough, on the CSGO map train, which kind of goes with the theming. I really like when people use map choice to go with the theming. I think that that's a really nice touch that not enough people do, just from a visualization standpoint. The effects at 208, 207, it looks so damn cool. Add that with the third person syncing and then just going on the journey towards the end and hitting the end of the station from start to finish. You get yourself a very well-paced sync and just, honestly, an awesome entry from this guy, Timeless Future. I'm not sure how long he's been syncing, but in terms of syncs, it is my personal favorite myself for round number 2. It's my personal favorite.
For me, the only parts that kept this sync from being a perfect score were the audio issues. Just a couple more guns could have used a little bit more audio gain, but after that, it's just an amazing display of effects, accuracy, and a theme on itself throughout the entire sync. Quite literally a trip.
Firstly, I'll start with saying that the masking on this was amazing. I'm not sure, maybe that's a tool for After Effects that key objects on screen over media, but if that's individually keyframed, it's fantastic work. These are super interesting scenes you created. I especially liked the Counter-Strike section. For me, that was really a nostalgic throwback to Sparkle's 100 HD submission in Kings of Saints 5. This style, admittedly, I'm kind of the oddball here. I'm not crazy for it. I wouldn't say it's not like cool and super skilled. It's hard for me to put even on an even playing field. It's hard for me to put it on an even playing field sync like Bravo 6's sync. Just because there's so much focus on visual effects, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. We've been talking about that a lot. There needs to be an equilibrium. If you were to separate all of the different visual aspects from it and just make it a regular sync, it's relatively simple. So it's hard for me to score it super high in, I guess, that section. This kind of scene-to-scene layout it's got thousands of meticulous keyframes and combining effects to create these unique transitions and movements. That's really cool. It's nevertheless really, really, really well done. But like I said, the sync itself, it's pretty fair. It's pretty basic audio with really balanced volume. I will say that it's very balanced. A couple of the sounds had a little bit too much effect on them to be comprehensive. Like I'm trying to look here on the 205. I guess that's 2 minutes and 5 seconds. The sound just kind of gets a little bit muffled. I guess that's from different effects put on it. I'm really not too big of a fan with altering. I've said this before I think I said this about one other guy. I'm too much of a fan of altering audio that much. Maybe it's just the original sound, but I'll say this anyway, just for other people who may end up getting points taken off for this. But if you can stay away from altering your audio to changing the equalization so much to where it becomes completely distorted in contrast to its original sound, you're just using the wrong. At that point, you're using the wrong gun. You shouldn't be using that. You shouldn't have to change it too much aside from maybe some equalization and the high end. And that's something that I would say for other people to try and stay away from. But getting back to the actual sync, super cool effect at, I guess, what is it? I have the timestamp here at 2:58, where we follow the track from these different environments to other environments. Flawless tracking on the clips, especially when we come to the city scene. It's just such a cool, unique aesthetic. I love this aesthetic. I don't think that it's appropriate for like a round 2 submission like this, where everybody's singing these crazy songs. You have submissions like say, and I know Jabber Turtle didn't submit, but you compare syncs like Jabber Turtle and Bravo 6 and old Blue Leaf syncs. You can't. For me, it's not really fair to hold some sync like this in contrast with those and score them evenly. Because not because it's a mediocre sync or anything, just because visually, the keyframing and the style and the I don't know what the word is for it, but the contrasting aesthetics, they don't go hand in hand that well. And I hope that for the next sync, because you're obviously going to round 3, is a little bit more aggressive, maybe a little bit different of an aesthetic, but all in all, it's a very cool, extremely unique sync. I haven't seen a sync like this, I guess with the exception of a couple during the first round, including your own. And I would like to see more syncs like that, but I would say to go, I suppose, a different route for round 3, just because I don't think it's going to compete very well with the other submissions, because I have a feeling how the other submissions are going to go. I think the other submissions are going to be pretty crazy, because I have a feeling what these guys are going to the style that they're going to try and sink in, and I don't. And this is just my own opinion. This was really subjective, but I don't think something like this is going to compete very well with what I think these guys are going to do. And I would encourage you to pursue a different, more aggressive sync. But nonetheless, this is a super cool aesthetic. I'd love to see more syncs like this.
And I love how there's like, at least with this particular entry, I really like how it goes from like, okay, there's 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., all in different environments at different times, which I think was a really cool touch to show, kind of like, to stick the song may be a little bit lacking in my opinion in terms of the, like you mentioned, the aggressiveness or the how much potential the song has. But I think Timeless Future is very good at maximizing songs that don't have as much potential to be like game-winning syncs.
A very, very, sorry, that's a very, very good point. To take that song and give it this much depth and create this environment for it, for this kind of song, is amazing. That's a very, very unique skill. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I want to say that.
No, you're good. You're good. No, that's what I was thinking. Like when you were saying it, I'm like, I feel like I should add that in, but I'll mention that I think that you do have a good point as well. I think that if Timeless Future takes now, I think going into the final round, the masterpiece, part of doing that masterpiece, that game-winning sync, take a song that has so much potential and do something like you just did with a song that doesn't have as much potential, and let's see what you can do with it. Let's see what you got, Mr. Timeless Future. That's all I can say. But very well done. Great submission all around. Third place in the top 5 yet again. And speaking of the top 2, we have 2 sinkers that remain. Both of them from China. And I have to tell you, China absolutely dominated this round. Out of the top 5, 3 of them are from China. And that's 1, 2, 3 on the board. China has swept the podium this round. It is absolutely crazy. With that, we finish up with second place and then go to first. But first, with 83.30, second place finishes with 83.30. We have UUU777. And I think compared to UUU's first round submission, this is easily one of the most improved syncs compared to round 1. I love the song choice. Very fast, very furious. I love the weapons choices. It is second to none. I love the Dragunov choice, once again, is very good. I think the sinker's very good with the Dragunov from Advanced Warfare. The visuals. I think this is what you were kind of looking for visual-wise with maybe Timeless Future with a song like this. Something like that. Maybe with a couple extra steps, I'd say, maybe. But visually, the sync looks fantastic. I love the After Effects masking. I love the subtitles are pretty good, even though I can't read a damn word in Chinese, but I guess that's all right. But I love the song choice. I love the song choice altogether. Love the visuals. It's a pretty good length, I think, for a sync. 2 minutes 26 seconds for this particular speed round, I think is great. And I gotta tell you, just a great entry all around.
I thought this had really, really great, really, really nice sounding sprays. That's what stood out to me. And we talk a lot about staying, or at least I do, lingering on the high end. This type of audio reminds me of like old Storm Down audio. It's really bassy. It kind of in the center of the high end and the low end, but for the song, it's perfect. Really, really appropriate gun choices too. This was almost perfect in the category of audio, with how well balanced it was. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult to follow visually, but I love the different transitional concepts. But combined with the motion blur was a little bit overwhelming. Combined with that, and effects made it a little bit hard to distinguish what was firing, or to make out what game was even on screen, even when watching it 60 frames. Less of the motion blur on this, and these transitions, especially in the first drop, would look insanely clean and smooth. But I mean, aside from that, I mean, if the actual visuals, and when I say visuals, I don't mean effects, I mean actual clips that pop up on screen with these different gunshots. if they were a little bit more coherent, I think that this would look a lot more clean and a lot more well polished. But I loved these effects regardless. The different, let me just find it here. I guess that's at 45 seconds. This first drop is insane. All of these different clips moving over one another, transitioning, is super, super cool. I love that. I'd like to see that with less, like I said, motion blur, so you can see more of what's going on screen. But I'm not griping on this at all. Great, but if it was just more comprehensive visually, that would really polish this up. And one other thing, and this is one of my few gripes on this, is I'm trying to find it here. I think Black Ops 4 at 1:19. Maybe this was a mistake in editing, but you can't see any of the sprays that are fired right now. You can see them after this short segment, but there's nothing here but I think that's not the KRM, but I guess the Black Ops 4 version of the KRM fire. That's the only thing you see. And I guess that was maybe a mistake in editing. Maybe it's supposed to be that way, but there's no sprays up on screen, but you can hear them. And they pop up immediately afterwards, and if that was somehow implemented in that section, that'd be great. The second drop is, again, like the first, phenomenal. But yeah, this was massive improvement from the first round's submission from UUU777. It was awesome.
The sprays overall, they were for me. Honestly, my gripes with the final result, to be honest, are the same as you, Stealth. It's just the motion blur in the second drop that I couldn't see what was happening, and well, what I assume is an editing error during the Black Ops 4 part where you couldn't see any of the sprays. But overall, the effects themselves just made the entire sync flow silky smooth. It was such a good sync, and especially with the audio, which has been the biggest challenge in this second round, to be honest. Well, the entire competition, to be honest, is just finding that balance between sprays, shots, and all. Which, yeah, personally speaking, I could say that I would have liked a little bit more of a tail end on the audio files of the Tag 19 and the Dragunov. But that's just my personal opinion, because I'm just used to just leaving all the audio file intact. But overall has been a really, really good submission. I cannot wait to see what the finale brings us.
And speaking of what the finale will bring us, on top of the 9 other names that have been mentioned, there will be also another one that'll be added into this finale. And of course, that person is the sinker that finished in first place. And just like that, we have made it to the final score on the boards here. And finishing up with a 92-65, a full 10 points ahead, or almost 10 points ahead of second place this round. And once again, this person won stage 1, and now the winner of stage 2 of the Kings of Sinks competition for season 7 is XXX Neo. While you can argue that compared to his first round submission, I mean, I think it's pretty fair to say that it's going to be almost impossible, at least in this particular round here, with the time frame that Neo had, to be able to one-up his submission. Can he do it in the finale? Absolutely he could. But in this round, it was going to be incredibly difficult. In this round, it was going to be incredibly difficult to be able to one-up the fire sync he did in round 1. So instead, he decided to go with a little bit more simpler approach. And I would argue that the sync is simple. I think it is lacking in the technical complexity, at least for me personally, compared to what he did in the first round. But the visuals are still really strong. He spent a lot of time making this visually good. I really like the... he's kind of doing a solid mixture between what Dr. Jayton does and Husel, and yet refining it and making it even better. to an extent, you know? And I think that, in particular, I think it matches more of what Pusel used to do, at least when you look at the effects that are being used in the first half of the sync. Then in the second half of the sync, he doesn't really add a lot of effects. He just focuses on the audio. And of course, I think the biggest thing that carries this sync on top of the effects in the first half, while I think it could be more consistent, personally, I think more consistency with the effects would have made this even stronger. I think that's what kind of prevented us from getting a perfect score. But what really was perfect throughout this sync, throughout all of it, was the audio. Audio was fantastic, great audio mixing, and a good balance, and a relatively good balance of effects in general. So I think that personally going into the finale, a lot of people are going to be taking chances, and I know Neo's going to be taking some chances as well. He's the overwhelming favorite going into the finale, but I think that Neo can't. This round, I think he kind of took his foot off the gas just a little bit, but Neo's got to have full foot on the gas if he wants to win this thing, and he needs to go all out, and he needs to have great audio to go with it, and I think that Mr. Neo has a great chance of winning this competition, and overall, a great round 2 submission. Serves the purpose for the round 2 submission, although I think a little too simple, but it was enough for him to get a 92.65, which is only an 8-point drop-off compared to the first round.
I feel like coming off the high that was around round 1 for Neo, this one feels more like a regression, but honestly, how can you top what he pulled last round?
100%.
The thing to shout out here is obviously, and the section that gave me more points, at least for me, was the sound design. You could hear everything from start to finish, and that's the thing with Neo. He has been consistent with the audio mastery that he brings to his syncs. You can always tell which gun is firing at what time, and it's this good audio mastery that actually acted as a double-edged sword, because you could hear what sections he missed. There was a section at the drop where there were a couple of guns that could have used. Like there was a build up to the drop, and he just stopped at one of the beats and then continued like nothing. So you could actually hear what he missed, and that's a little bit of over there, and at the end as well, that it ate a little bit of his points. But overall, it's a solid thing that it's really brought up by the amazing sound design that he gave it.
Yeah, this is the count of audio that needs to be in every single sync. The quality of the audio is better than that of the actual guns in their respective games. It's so comprehensive, it's so clear, it's so crisp. Everyone needs to be taking notes from this guy. Simple but intricate visual effects, a nice vibe. It keeps really steady pace, mirroring the music, even though it's really simplistic. These different environments, particularly in the beginning, propel these kinds of syncs in terms of effects and audio equally. More time can be spent on audio rather than video, which arguably in most cases can take longer to create than clean audio. This is a great example of keeping this equilibrium between the two. I really don't have too many complaints. I could see improvement with some more variety and evenly distributed visual effects, since majorly that existed exclusively in the first half, but it's still a great sync. Neo is making some serious moves and pioneering a whole new format for the future of gun syncing. This is a super interesting avenue of visual that this guy's brought forth. That, collaborating with the flawless audio in these submissions, a really cool experience to watch be created. And this on a side note, this goes to show you don't have to have an insanely overly edited, overly keyframed sync to have something super clean that scores high. This guy scored high twice in a row. He scored first place twice. Correct me if I'm wrong, Forzy. I don't know if that's ever happened in KOS before. Somebody did take first place twice in a row, potentially for a third round. With this quality of audio, this is going to be really hard to This is basically going to be a boss fight, unless these other guys get down this their audio issues. Most of them are minor.
If the others get down to business, you know.
Yeah, I know. If you can get this kind of audio, say in somebody like Timeless Futures sync or Ryu or Ryu, however you say his name, I'm probably butchering it.
That is
If
right.
you can get this type of audio in those syncs, I mean, you've taken the competition already. It's so clean. It's so crisp. It's so comprehensive. You can see. PGS already said this. You can tell which guns on screen. You can distinguish, them just by their sound. It's beautiful, really. It is perfect. It scored perfect for me in mixing and mastering, almost perfect for me in gun choice, just because there wasn't too much variety within gun choice. But where they were lacking here is technical complexity, simply because a lot of it is admittedly the same thing, especially after the halfway mark. I'm looking right here after 150 or so. It changes a little bit. It swipes back and forth. You have some swish pans. It changes to another pack. But aside from that, there's not too much going on. But if these other guys get audio this clean, I mean, they've taken the competition already.
Yeah, and going back to what you said earlier, I believe the only other person that has won the first two stages of the competition in a row was Sturmdown back in, I believe it was season 5 or season 6. It was one of those two. I believe it was season 6 is when Sturmdown did it. He was the winner of both stages. So Neo's on track to making potential history here. He could be the first person to sweep the stages, and that's something that can happen. Obviously there are some competitions that were only 2 stages, but now we have 3, so we'll have to see how that goes. But great job from Neo and everybody in this competition. And before we close things out, we can go over the 10 people once again that have made it into the finale. So the Kings of Sinks Season 7 finale will be based on the following people that will compete for a title. Dr. Jayton from the United States, he was the winner of KOS 3. He's going to be the only sinker remaining that has previously won a title, so he's going to be trying to win his second title. He'll be the first sinker in history to win 2 if he manages to do it. Shadow Gamer, who is a multi-finalist. He's been in the finals before, so he's going to be competing once again. He is the only Russian sinker remaining in the field. And then joining Dr. Jayton as the only other American left, we have Sinks, who finished inside of the top 4 in the finals the last time. So Sinks is going to be going for it once again. Basically finishing pretty close to runner-up. So we'll see how Sinks does in this finale. Shibuya Rin, this is the first time Shibuya Rin has competed in the competition, is a veteran, but will be competing in the finals for the first time as well. Lakewind, I'd argue, is probably the rookie Phenon class that could be a sleeper pick here. Representing China, Lakewind and Shibuya Rin both representing China. And then Bravo 6 from Indonesia. Bravo 6 has made it to the finals before. Multi-finalist as well. Ryu, this is his first time in the final as the only sinker from Vietnam that remains. And then 3 sinkers from China once again. Timeless Future making it to the finals for the first time. Yu also making it to the finals for the first time. And Neo XX Neo. Or XXX Neo. XXX, if I'm going to say his full name. Who has made it to the finals, finished runner-up in KOS 6. Just behind Toverniak. So Neo is going to be going for a title once again. If Neo wins, Neo will win a title for the first time as well. A lot of first-timers going at this for the title. A lot of people have never been to the finals before. People that have been there before. So we'll see who wins. And we wish all these sinkers the best of luck. And even to those that were eliminated, everybody that submitted, we want to give you guys a huge thank you for taking part in this competition. We appreciate you for making this all possible and everything that happens. And one more thing that we are going to go over is the Kings of Sinks Hall of Fame is still in voting right now. We are going to be at the end of the finale, we will be inaugurating our first 2 sinkers into the Hall of Fame right from the get-go from the voting, and then 2 other names will be thrown into the mix. So in total, there'll be 4 names being inducted into the initial Kings of Sinks Hall of Fame. And based off of the voting so far, the early voting early on voting, the 2 names that are going in so far are Jabber Turtle and Blue Leaf. However, the voting is not over just yet, so it is not over. So everyone, if you want to go vote, you go into the Discord, the Gun Sync Lounge. The link will be in the description down below. You go to Hall of Fame nomination voting, and you put your vote by reacting to the number of the person that is voting. And you can see all of them there. And honestly, perhaps we might have a new person get added into the Hall of Fame as a result of this competition. But we shall see. So thank you to everybody that is been a part of this competition, all of our judges. And going into the Gun Sync finale, the Grand Kings of Sync Season 7 finale, the final due date. Funny enough, and unironically, we're going to give these sinkers a good amount of time. It's not the speed round, so instead of 2 months, it will be 3. And the expected release date of this video, if you're watching this now, the date is November 7th. So in exactly 3 months from now, aka February 7th, 2026, will be the grand finale due date. We want to give these guys a lot of time to make their sinks, and we want to give these guys some time to shine. So then, just shortly after February 7th, the finale will come out. Just a couple weeks later, that's going to be the game plan. As long as all the judges finish up their scoring right before the beginning of the next competition, which will be KOS 8, which is official at this stage. We will be trying to do Kings of Sinks Season 8, which will basically come right after the finale. But for now, we must focus on the finale. The final 10 will be competing for a title, and the final due date will be due February 7th, 2026. So good luck to the 10 remaining gun sinkers, and may the best gun sinker win.
Good luck to everybody. And I got one thing to say. If you vote for me at the KOS Hall of Fame, to the 10 sinkers that are still left in the competition, I can influence your score. So, number 5.
PGS,
good luck to everybody.
PGS, you had to use this opportunity to try to buy votes, huh?
Hell yeah.
It's interference, dude. This is competitive interference, man.
What I like to call election interference. That's election interference. We got to take your name off the
That's
ballot.
what I'd like to say it, and they're gonna steal it. He's gonna steal it, PGS. He's going to.
Yes.
Predict it now.
Vote for number 5.
I'd like to presidentially wish all of you a good luck in the final competition, the round 3 of the Kings of Sinks. Good luck to you all.
Almost say is make sure we don't get this on polymarket betting, because then people will be losing a lot of money. That's all we're going to say. But thank you very much to everybody that is in this competition, everybody that's competing, everyone that's been submitting, and judges and everyone that's been supporting it. We wish everybody the best of luck, and we'll see who wins.